April 11, 2021, 11:47 p.m. Miami International Airport. Luis Herrera was invisible. That was his superpower. A security guard smoking near the entrance to the privileged waiting lounge. The guard nods. Luis smiles. In 15 minutes, this man will disappear forever, taking with him 2 duffel bags filled with cartel cash. They will search for him for 3 years. They will never find him. Luis Herrera was invisible for 3 years, working the graveyard shift. People looked through janitors like glass. Security guards treated him like furniture. He was 42, an immigrant from Tegucigalpa, Honduras. Construction work in Houston, dishwashing in New Orleans, factory jobs in Memphis. Miami was supposed to be different. The airport job came with benefits, steady hours, and the promise of invisibility that had become Luis's greatest asset. The Miami airport's VIP terminal was Luis's regular territory. Marble floors, leather chairs, complimentary champagne, corporate executives, entertainment celebrities, professional athletes, and wealthy families. But Luis had noticed patterns among certain flights that didn't match the typical VIP profile. Luis had glimpsed inside one bag during routine cleaning. Stacks of green bills bundled with rubber bands. Conservative estimate, $500,000, maybe more. The sight haunted him for weeks, not because he immediately planned to steal it, but because it represented impossible wealth. 2 kids back home depended on the money he wired every month. $800 that represented half his paycheck and all of their hope. The bags came from somewhere in the airport. Luis began paying attention with methodical patience. Luis Herrera was a man shaped by hardship. He came to the United States from Tegucigalpa, Honduras, carrying the hopes of his family. At 42, his face was a map of his life's journey. His skin was weathered from years of working under the sun. He worked construction in Houston, washed dishes in New Orleans, and labored in factories in Memphis. Each job eventually ended. Budget cuts, automation, or immigration raids that sent him running. Luis made $12 an hour. After taxes, his weekly paycheck was $432. His rent was $1,200 a month for a studio apartment in Hialeah. His car was a 2007 Honda Civic with 190,000 miles held together by prayer and duct tape. Insurance, gas, food, utilities, and basic necessities consumed most of his remaining income. The $800 he sent to Honduras each month left him with approximately $50 per week. His daughter Maria was 16, brilliant in mathematics, dreaming of becoming an engineer. His son Carlos was 13, obsessed with soccer, determined to play professionally. Elena had divorced Luis not from lack of love, but from exhaustion. 3 years of separation while he worked illegally in the United States. Missing birthdays, graduations, and the small daily moments that build relationships. Luis worked 60 hours a week when possible, picking up extra shifts whenever someone called in sick. Luis cleaned these spaces every night, moving like a ghost through conversations he wasn't supposed to hear. He had picked up enough English, and his native Spanish allowed him to follow conversations. But Luis kept everything to himself. Invisibility required silence. But Luis had noticed patterns among certain flights that didn't match the typical VIP profile. These flights arrived only on weekends, usually Thursday through Sunday. Always private jets with Mexican tail numbers. The aircraft were expensive but configured for cargo space. The passengers were never families or typical business executives. They were men in expensive suits who spoke Spanish with specific regional accents Luis recognized. Cartel accents. The vocabulary, the inflection, the casual references to violence. These men traveled light. No luggage, no briefcases, but they always left with something. Luis had glimpsed inside one bag during routine cleaning. Stacks of green bills bundled with rubber bands. It took Luis 6 months to understand the operation. The Mexican flights would land around midnight. Security always told him to skip it when the special passengers arrived. One Thursday in March, the security guard stepped outside for a cigarette break longer than usual. Through the partially open door, he saw 3 men in suits sitting around a mahogany table. On the table were 4 large duffel bags, unzipped, filled with cash. One man was counting bills. Another made notes in a ledger. The third smoked a cigar. They were waiting for something. 20 minutes later, 2 different men arrived. Americans based on their English conversation. They wore polo shirts and khakis. One of the Americans opened a briefcase. Inside were documents, passports, shipping manifests. The Mexicans pushed 2 duffel bags across the table. The Americans took them and left. Luis had witnessed a money laundering operation, probably tied to drug trafficking. The Miami airport was a washing machine for dirty cash, and he was mopping the floors around it. Luis Herrera made $12 an hour. His daughter needed dental work that would cost $3,000. Meanwhile, every weekend, millions of dollars passed through VIP Lounge 7. The men who controlled this money were criminals. Luis had no moral qualms about that. They destroyed communities with drugs, murdered rivals, corrupted police forces. If someone were to steal from them, the world wouldn't mourn the loss. But stealing from a cartel wasn't like robbing a bank. Banks had insurance, federal protection. Cartels had enforcers, torture chambers, and unmarked graves. If Luis got caught, he wouldn't go to prison. He would simply disappear. Still, the numbers were overwhelming. In one night, he had seen at least $4 million. For Luis, that represented 33 years of work, 33 years of mopping floors. What if being invisible was actually an advantage? Luis spent 2 months studying the operation before he touched anything. Money exchanges happened every Thursday and Sunday night. Mexican flights always arrived between 11:30 and midnight. The Americans usually showed up 45 minutes later. Security was tight but predictable. 2 guards in the VIP terminal, 1 roaming patrol. The cameras were Luis's biggest concern until he realized they were also his salvation. Airport security filmed passengers and visitors, not employees. Janitors were background noise, invisible even to electronic surveillance. Luis had access to every room, every corridor, every service area in the terminal. The service elevator was the key. It connected the VIP terminal to the maintenance level, which led to the employee parking garage through a series of tunnels. His plan was simple. During the 45-minute window, he would enter VIP Lounge 7, take 2 of the 4 duffel bags, hide them in his janitor cart under fake trash bags, transport them through the service elevator to the parking garage, load them into his car, and drive away. The beauty of the plan was its simplicity. Janitors weren't searched when they left the airport. Luis bought a used Toyota Corolla for $3,200 cash, paying in small bills over several weeks to avoid suspicion. He parked it in the employee lot far from the security cameras. He practiced hiding objects in his janitor cart using bags of sand to simulate the weight of cash. He memorized the walking time from the service elevator to his car, 4 minutes and 20 seconds. A duffel bag full of money would weigh approximately 40 pounds. Luis's cart could hold 80 pounds of equipment plus trash, so 2 bags would fit comfortably. He studied the security guards' routines with obsessive detail. The roaming patrol followed a predictable pattern, checking the same locations every 20 minutes. The VIP terminal guards rotated their cigarette breaks, but always between midnight and 12:30 a.m. Luis timed these breaks for 6 weeks. The pattern never varied, and always for exactly 10 minutes. Most importantly, Luis prepared his exit strategy. He couldn't simply disappear from Miami. Instead, he planned to finish his shift, go home normally, call in sick the next day, and then vanish over the weekend. By the time anyone connected the theft to him, he would be hundreds of miles away. The week before the heist, Luis maintained his normal routine while making subtle preparations. He withdrew small amounts of cash from his bank account over several days. The total was $847, his entire life savings. Luis wrote letters to his children in Honduras explaining his love for them. He sealed these letters and gave them to a trusted friend with instructions to mail them only if Luis failed to contact his family. He also prepared a confession letter addressed to the FBI, admitting to the theft and providing details about the money laundering operation. This letter was his insurance. If the cartel eventually found him, he could reveal that he had already provided law enforcement with detailed information. By April 10th, Luis was ready. The next suitable opportunity would occur on Sunday, April 11th. April 11th, 2021. The thunderstorm began forming over the Everglades around 8 p.m. By 11 p.m., the storm had intensified into a weather system that would dominate local news coverage. Commercial flights were being delayed, diverted, or canceled entirely. Only the private terminal remained fully operational, protected by covered walkways. Luis arrived for his shift at 10:45 p.m., 15 minutes early as usual. He punched his time card, collected his cleaning supplies, and began his routine. For the first hour, he worked normally, mopping floors, emptying trash cans, and cleaning restrooms. At 11:52 p.m., the Mexican Gulfstream G650 appeared on approach. The plane was elegant and expensive, probably worth $40 million. 3 men in dark suits deplaned and walked quickly through the covered walkway. At 12:05 a.m., the 3 men entered VIP Lounge 7. On the table were 4 large duffel bags positioned in a neat row. Luis positioned his cart in the hallway, pretending to organize his supplies. At 12:15 a.m., the moment he had been waiting for arrived. Guard A, the guard stationed at the lounge entrance, stepped outside for his cigarette break. It was a 10-minute window. Luis's plan was now in motion. He pushed his cart toward the lounge, his movements deliberate and unhurried. The three Mexican men were seated around the mahogany conference table, focused on their phones. They glanced at him briefly, then returned to their phones. He was invisible to them. With movements practiced hundreds of times, Luis approached the table. He lifted the first duffel bag and placed it in the bottom compartment of his janitor cart. The second bag was slightly heavier, probably containing larger denomination bills. The entire operation took 53 seconds. His heart was hammering, but his hands were steady. He resumed mopping, working his way toward the door. No one had noticed a thing. Luis pushed his cart out of the lounge and into the empty hallway. Guard A was still outside, lost in his phone as he finished his cigarette. Luis moved at his normal, steady pace toward the service elevator. He stopped once to empty a small trash can, an ordinary action that reinforced his cover. The cart felt heavier than usual, but it looked and smelled perfectly normal. He reached the service elevator, located in a corridor with no cameras. The elevator arrived empty. Once inside, he pressed the button for the maintenance level. As the doors closed, he was finally alone with the money. The elevator descended into the airport's hidden underbelly, a maze of pipes, wires, and storage rooms. This area was dark, loud, and rarely visited by anyone other than maintenance staff. Luis pushed his cart through the familiar corridors, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. He navigated the 200-yard utility tunnel that led to the employee parking garage. At 12:25 a.m., he emerged into the nearly empty garage. His old Toyota Corolla was waiting in the poorly lit spot he had chosen months ago. He quickly opened the trunk, transferred the two heavy duffel bags from his cart, and covered them with a tarp and some tools. He then wiped down the cart, leaving no trace of what it had just been used for. He returned the empty cart to the terminal and resumed his cleaning duties for another 17 minutes. To any future investigation, it would appear he had simply been taking out the trash. At 12:47 a.m., Luis Herrera clocked out for the last time. He walked calmly to his car, nodded to the security guard at the exit, and drove out of the airport into the rain-swept night. As he merged onto the interstate, the lights of Miami International Airport faded in his rearview mirror. He was free, he was rich, and he was a ghost. Just 4 minutes after Luis drove away, the cartel's American contacts arrived at VIP Lounge 7. 4 duffel bags were expected. They found only 2. The Mexican leader was furious. "Where are the others?" he demanded. The Mexicans reported a theft to airport security, but couldn't say what was missing. Security Supervisor James Morrison reviewed surveillance footage covering VIP Lounge 7. The only other person on camera was janitor Luis Herrera, pushing his cart and mopping floors. Morrison concluded no theft occurred. He filed a report. Clients likely misplaced their own items. The cartel was not satisfied. They launched their own investigation led by El Martillo, the Hammer. His team identified every airport employee present that night. They began kidnapping and torturing them for information. Security Supervisor Miguel Santos was taken from his home. El Martillo's men went to Luis's apartment in Hialeah. It was almost empty. The FBI found the confession letter he left, which detailed the cartel's money laundering operation. The case remains officially unsolved. He never used his real name again, never contacted his old friends. The Toyota Corolla he abandoned was found stripped for parts, offering investigators another dead end. For a time, his family in Honduras received large, anonymous cash donations through untraceable channels. His daughter Maria was able to attend a prestigious university to study engineering. His son Carlos joined a top soccer academy. Some say he settled in a quiet fishing village in the Caribbean. Others believe he moved to South America. The truth is, he could be anywhere. Luis Herrera became a legend. He was the invisible man who saw an opportunity and took it. He risked everything not for greed, but for love. And in doing so, he pulled off the perfect crime and vanished into history.